General Malenka for letting me have it here, because where else would a maintenance warrant have it than in the bays where I started as a PFC here as a mechanic. And to everybody I work with, I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. To everyone, thank everybody for coming. Retirees, Chief Gatewood came all the way from Fresno, Chief Hardy came all the way from Fort Irwin mates, and everybody else that showed up. I appreciate it. But right now, I want to thank everybody for the mates, employees past and present, for everything you do. A lot of the outside don't realize all the annual trainings, the mobbing units, the new equipment training, everything else you guys take in stride, and you do a fantastic job of supporting the California National Guard. Whatever comes through that front door, I'm this air traffic controller. You guys, all the supervisors, the lead men, mechanics, supply personnel, you all make everything happen to make it look easy. And it makes my job so much easier to have to depend on. Sergeant Bauer takes care of everybody's HR, make sure you're getting paid, make sure all your health care is done, and she takes care of all that. And in the middle of all this confusion, who I think is the best production controller in the state, Sergeant First Class Smet, makes it all, it keeps everybody straight, it keeps me straight and all the numbers, it keeps everybody like turn in your work orders when they are, you know. So all of you, first of all, everybody from Mace, I thank and appreciate every one of you. Thank you. And it's amazing that I ended up where I am. In 1974, in a garage in Bakersfield, I was working on an old dirt bike, and there's two things in life at that point that I thought I was really good at. Sports and working on just tearing stuff apart and put it back together. My dad came out, and he made me left-handed on purpose, which is a whole different story. But I was doing something that he didn't understand, and he looked at me and kind of sighed over my shoulder and goes, "God, I love you, son, but you know, some people are mechanically inclined and some people aren't, and you just aren't." And that has stuck with me from that day, probably changed my life. Because all of a sudden, I was a pretty shy kid, and after that, I was like, you know what, I'm going to show you what I can do. So after that, I was tearing apart stuff, my brother and I in the garage, rebuilding engines, whatever, and then, you know, so when I told him I was joining the National Guard as a mechanic, he just looked at me and goes, "Really?" And that was in 1981. Sergeant Major Bergmuller used to work down at USPFO. I didn't know what a sergeant major was. Dad had no idea of joining the military at all. "Hey, what do you like doing?" And I go, "Well, taking stuff apart, put it back together." And he goes, "Hey, there's a maintenance unit 951 in Tascadero." So the next thing I know, I raised my hand, and here I am. And there's so many people to thank. Colonel Morgan, Colonel Nichols, Lieutenant Colonel Howe, Lieutenant Colonel Jarvis, Mr. Wilhelm, who was a maintenance warrant in the 951. Colonel Morgan called him in. If you guys aren't familiar with Colonel Morgan, he's a 6'6" Texan that when he spoke, he thought God was talking. And very intimidating man. And Mr. Wilhelm, he goes, "Earl, you want to hire this guy? He's a cook at the Fishbowl in Morro Bay." He goes, "Yeah, but he does okay, you know, in the unit." And he goes, "Well, okay, he's your dead weight." I didn't hear that story until about 8 months ago when Mr. Wilhelm stopped by. And lo and behold, I'm sitting in that office now. So there's a lot of things that just happened. And Colonel Morgan, Mr. Pangborn, Mr. Mahoney, Sergeant Major Norris, Sergeant Major Neal, Sergeant First Class Cutler, Jerry, who is Command Sergeant Major Cutler's father, who I worked with. And then from the G4, Chief Evans, Sergeant Major Dawson, Sergeant Major Shields, Sergeant Major Preston, Sergeant First Class Mason, all helped me as a G4 up there in division. And then a lot of special personnel that I don't think I'd be standing here. Colonel Kim, who is probably the most knowledgeable and professional logistics officer I have ever met in my life. He just had it together. Lieutenant Colonel Beagles, who I watched grow up from a captain, who's now the HR for the state. Fantastic friend and a great leader. my predecessors, who I all called last week, Chief Ellis, Chief Merrill, who gave me most of my gray hair when he come in to inspect. Rick would come through and just tear you apart, and then turn around and help you and teach you and help you fix it. And then Chief Francis, who's all three of these guys are retired, but those are the three CW5s that really helped my career and were mentors and friends. And it goes on, you know, Chief Martinez, Jefe, Chief Leveron, Chief Escobar, Chief Alexander, Chief Cox. Ron Cox, a very special person. We used to call him Mr. Big. Chief Ventura, Chief Hardy, Command Sergeant Major Witt, Sergeant Major Rober, Master Sergeant Palmer, Mr. Jeff Scott, formerly Sergeant First Class Scott, Master Sergeant Brocott, who, by the way, took Private Rempe and taught him how to drive a deuce and a half. Sergeant Rieger, Sergeant Webster. Now, Command Sergeant Major Cutler and Master Sergeant Kamacona, who are now, Kamakona's deployed, but I work with both of their fathers, and I've known both of them since they were 19 years old. And now both their sons work here. So there's a reason it feels like a family around here, because it is. And the personnel from USPFO, Base Spencer, who the stuff coming in and out of here make me look like I know what I'm doing when it comes to transportation. Thank you, babe, for all the hundreds of thousands of pieces of equipment that come in and out. She makes it look very easy. And where are you at? Dave Clark, retired CW5. Thank you so much for coming. And when I first became a supervisor in 1991, OM7, I had 18 mechanics, and half of them were having personal problems. And this and that, and I actually had two soldiers or employees try to commit suicide. And this was the first 6 months as a supervisor. And I walked to Colonel Morgan's office, and I thought, I can't do this. I want my toolbox back. He just looked at me and goes, it'll get better, and I shut up and go back to work. So I did. It got better. I learned, hard knocks. And Sergeant First Class Terry Miller was my lead man. This was where the 185th tanks were taken care of. This one bay right here was where we took care of 3 battalions of howitzers and then the 149 Armor. Then the rest of the support shop. But this is where I started, and he taught me. He was my platoon sergeant in 951, and as a lead man here, taught me everything I know about maintenance. And if you didn't do anything very quickly, he'd get a size 14 and he'd kick you up off the ground. So I thank him for all of that. Now, the person, John Keister, retired CW4 Keister, got the C5 mechanic and looked at me and said, you know what, you need to go to OCS. I looked at him, I go, you're crazy, I don't want to be an officer. He goes, no, you need to. So he saw something in me, it got me out of my comfort zone. Next thing you know, a lot of you probably don't know, I was a second lieutenant and a first lieutenant. And if you would have told me then, when First Lieutenant Rempe was supporting Captain and Major Malenka for the 149 Armor out on the gunnery range, that he would be the division commander, promote me to CW5, I would have had you pee in a bottle. Because there was no way I could see this coming. And it's amazing, and like General Malenka said, we have a long history of supporting each other, and then Sergeant Major Norris was out there, First Sergeant Juarez showed up, and then where's Rieger? Rieger, you should be in the 149, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there's a lot of connection there between the 149 and the mates. David Chambers, who both of us got in the Guard about the same time. We were both promoted to PFC and E4 on the same set of orders in the same company in the same platoon. Then I went officer, he became E7, he became a warrant, and then lo and behold, I think there's a mix-up between the TDA, or else we've been promoted to CW4 at the same time. Dave is like a brother to me, and he's been here every step of the way in my whole career, and thank you for everything you've ever done. And now my strength comes from that little woman right there.
Thank you.
I love you.
Love you
And
too.
my brother and sister, James and Joan, that have been there the whole time. And thank you for everything you've done. And my son, Jacob, my daughter, Katie, and yes, my future son-in-law over here. Thank you for always being there for me and never give me too much problem when you were growing up. Not too much, I'm looking at you. And by the way, no more tattoos for me, okay?
Okay.
By the way, my daughter has an ordnance bomb tattooed on her bottom of her leg, and she just paid off the car that I co-signed for, so I had her come get the pink slip, and I asked her if she could come over and pick it up, and so she comes over and she had her flip-flops on, and she goes, Dad, can you look at my foot? I think I got bit by a black widow. I'm looking down at her foot, concerned. She lifts up her pant leg, and here's the ordnance bomb. I'm like, really? She goes, well, I knew you wouldn't get a tattoo, so I got it for you. So, anyway, and finally, my wife, Cheryl, thank you so much for making my life wonderful and always being there every step of the way. Ups, downs, everything else, you've made my life wonderful. And I thank you all for coming, and it's truly a great honor and to be here, and I hope I can live up to it. So thank you all. I've been sleeping about doing this, so now I'm glad it's over. Did you have something?
Yeah, I was gonna read something if that's cool.
Do it.
Everybody cool. Okay. I got it. Dane had pink paper, so. Okay. Dad, or should I say Chief Warrant Officer 5 Rempe? I think your new title has a fine ring to it. Very suiting, if I do say so myself. But to me, your title will always be Dad. I'm immensely proud of you. The energy, time, bravery, and dedication it took to reach your goal of becoming CW5. That's pretty damn impressive, Dad. You are such an overachiever. My whole life, I've been a daddy's girl. Naturally, I wanted to do everything you did. I was always your sidekick, learning about cars, retrieving socket wrenches, fuses, beer, and tons of oil rags. I love going to the hardware store, building a fence, laying cement, or whatever job needed to be done. One unbroken ritual during our time spent together was blaring music, indoors or out. Almost positive our neighbors hated it. 28 years later, almost positive my own neighbors hate it too. Every morning around 5 a.m., when I was very young, I would wake up to the smell of coffee being made. That was when I knew it was time to get up. You would pour your cup of coffee, make me a hot chocolate, and always put a little coffee in it, and told me not to tell Mom. I remember sitting on the counter in the bathroom watching you shave, and then you would turn on your truck to warm up, finish putting on your uniform, fill your coffee mug, and kiss me goodbye. Dad, you are my best friend and role model. I look up to you physically, because, well, I'm short. But also because I admire your honesty, moral conviction, motivation, fearlessness to voice your opinion, and loyalty. I know your job requires strict rules and regulations, orders that must be followed, unless you know something isn't right. And you are never afraid to challenge it, regardless of the disagreeable and bitter taste it may leave in others' mouths. Because that's what leaders do. Leaders ensure accountability for all individuals, strive for equality, and believe in judging one on their own personal merit. You taught me this. I can say with 100%, that the inability to keep my mouth shut when I see something I think is unjust is my worst quality. It's definitely got me into trouble, but I never backed down, even maybe when I should have. Thank you for that, Dad. All of my life you had to leave for days, weeks, months, and years for your job, different cities, states, and countries. You have sacrificed so much for your family, your country, and every citizen in it. You did your duty, and you did both times you were deployed, we talked almost every day, whether by email or phone. I always missed you, but have been taught to adapt and overcome. And you always said, wherever you go, there you are. And you're my dad, so of course you'd be fine. We would mail movies we loved, like The Shining, Die Hard, Young Frankenstein, or The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, so we could watch them together. And without fail, always listen to Freebird. With every email or phone call, it was always interlaced with a great deal of sarcasm and laughing, a prominent Rempe family trait. Thank you for that as well.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I love you more than the moon and the stars. For once in my life, I can't find the words to describe how proud I am of you. You have more than earned this promotion. I think you've earned a beer as well.
Okay.